Good evening and welcome to another installment of the Young Republicans of Oregon virtual event series. Each event will feature a live Q&A with a guest and a quick wrap-up. As one of Oregon's most active Republicans, most of you are likely already familiar with Chairman Dallas Hurd. Before entering politics, Dallas was known within his Roseburg community as a successful entrepreneur and farmer. His demonstrated leadership skills have landed him a unique position to serve the Republican Party in both the Oregon State Senate and in the ORP. I'm thrilled to welcome Dallas Hurd to our conversation. So you wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
How do you view your position as a senator differing versus the ORP chairman?
Sorry, I was cracking a joke there, James, and I didn't quite catch what you said there.
All right. Yeah. So one of your hats being a state senator, another one being the ORP chairman.
Mm-hmm.
How do those two different positions differ?
Well, probably for starters, the easy spot to call out would be one is kind of like executive branch from the standpoint of being the chair of the party. It's kind of like you're the CEO of a corporation. And so unlike the Senate, where you have no authority, really, the Senate has authority as a whole to make law and whatnot. But this chair position is unique to what my past public service, because now I can actually make decisions. I try to always seek advice of those around me, because that's really strong leadership, in my opinion. You surround yourself with great people. You seek advice. You seek godly advice. And then you make decisions based off that advice, but you have to be accountable for it. So in the end, as the leader, you have to make the final decision. So that's where this position is both a little bit of an extra burden, but also at the same time is a bit of a blessing too, versus being in the Senate, because being in the Senate is easily the most frustrating experience of my life. And I'm pretty confident no matter where the road takes me, it will have always been the most frustrating experience of my life, because as I sadly say to a lot of people, if it's a good idea, it's got no chance in Salem right now. And so you could have the best legislative concepts. You could have done all the homework. You could have reached out to all the different people. You could have gotten advice from, everybody you can think of. But if the Democratic supermajority and the radical leftist agenda doesn't like it and it doesn't further their program of hostile takeover of our culture, then it's a thumbs down, unless you're willing to sell your soul and your constituent souls too in a trade-off, which, just full transparency, I've gotten into the trading game with the Democrats in years past. But the way I looked at it was I would find issues they really needed my vote and they thought I was not for it. And I held those cards close to my vest, and I turned that into political leverage to get things that my constituents really needed, or bills that policy-wise I thought really needed to get through. But the last couple of years has shown me that is a fruitless mission, and that if you're really going to protect freedom and liberty, there's really just not a whole lot of bargaining that can be done that is high in integrity and character with the Democrats here. So, the chair, a lot of responsibility. It does come with a lot of authority. That said, it's my ultimate mission to unwind that authority and unconcentrate that authority away from the chair position and hand it back to the delegates of Oregon and the PCPs of the Oregon Republican Party. But there's always going to be a role for the person that is your chairman or chairwoman to need to make some final decisions on stuff. That's a really politician-y, long-winded, confusing answer, but hopefully it made sense to somebody other than me.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've watched the last couple sessions fold out, and it's got to be frustrating being in the minority down in Salem these days. But
yeah, we have no control over anything. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. The Democrats decide who the chairs of the committees are going to be, who the vice chairs are going to be, how many Republicans, how many Democrats. We've had countless bills over the years where the bill was going to die because of a lack of support on the committee, including not enough Democrats to pass a bill. And, Senate President Peter Courtney will come in and either add himself to the committee to break a tie, or take one of the Democrats off of the committee to replace a no vote with a yes vote. And yet they constantly yell and scream about how they're the party of democracy and the party of the people and all that. But yet there's just no justice, and it's so perverted. It's just hard to distinguish what's going on some days from the other stuff. So yeah, no, it's a very frustrating experience, but it is a worthwhile. Both positions are very much worthwhile. Anytime you have an opportunity to serve your fellow people around you and fight the good fight for what is right versus the people that are trying to do things that are wrong, I would encourage all of you men and women to step up and do it, because it's only in an absence of good people does evil thrive. And that's really what's brought us to this point, is we as free men and women, not men like James. James is a Marine. He's already stepped up and gone above and beyond. That's just how I see it. Veterans, especially active duty combat veterans, I think it's absurd for us to ask any more of them. They fought over there. We need to fight over here for them. So especially for people like myself who have not served in the armed services, it's the least I can do to just go make myself miserable and fight that good fight.
Definitely. So, all right. So thank you for that. So as chairman of the party, what do you plan to do to strengthen the Republican Party and our Republican representation within the state?
Well, so I try to look at it again like it's a business, from the standpoint that the party needs, the party organization itself needs structure. It needs to have, we have this thing called the organizational chart that we've put together in my administration in the first, what's it been, about 6-7 weeks that I've been in since the election, where it shows chair position, executive director, assistant to the executive director, assistant to the chair, director of communications, director of social media, director of finance, director of fundraising, all these different positions and whatnot. One, to give clarity to who's who and what lane of work they're focused on and what comes underneath their house, if you will. It also gives clarity to me on what's happening within the organization I am responsible for, in large part, but it also helps for folks like yourself out there that are either deeply involved with the party or wanting to get involved with the party. It helps you see how it all works, and it just keeps everything's it just defines what we're doing, and keeps everybody in their lane. So I think ultimately, once we get these positions filled and we really start to do the good hard work on having a vision, then we'll start executing that vision. And part of that vision is going to be obviously having committees that we're putting together on what's the best practices for voter registration and how do we implement that all the way out to the counties and the grassroots level. That's really where your organization, like an ORP at the state level or the national level, is so critical. We don't want to be these 36 counties all individually trying to recreate the wheel, duplicating efforts. People over in Union County could have built the best spaceship of all time, but because there's no coordination, people over in Coos County are making their own rocket. Well, it's already been done over in Union County. We don't need to do it in Coos County. So that's wasted time that you could have been registering voters, raising funds, spending money on new sign equipment, new whatever, right? Like, so no more duplication, no more disjointed disconnection. Get everybody working together, get everybody connected, get everybody communicating. And then from the top down, the ideas and the investment tools need to flow down to the grassroots level. That's where top down works from a centralized management perspective. Top down doesn't work from a government perspective. That's how freedom dies. But that's not what we're talking about here. This is your leadership, your visionary people. They collaborate, they get everybody working together, and then we just start executing that mission. Now, if we're doing a great job, we'll get a lot of great stuff coming up from the grassroots as well that we will adopt at the state level, if it's a pyramid, and send it back out to the rest of the counties that weren't maybe doing quite as great on that. I keep bragging about Josephine County. Josephine County is doing great stuff. They weren't even organized just a few months ago, guys, and they're just rock starring it down there. Now they're not the only ones. We got a lot of great folks across the state. People in Union County are doing a great job. People in Coos County are doing a great job, and there's several more that I haven't mentioned yet. So voter registration, data. Okay, data for us millennials. That's like we have now. I'll be the first to tell you, I am the dumbest, most dinosaur millennial that will ever live when it comes to tech and data and all that kind of stuff. But here's the beautiful thing. I don't have to be the wizard of all things. I'll go find men and women that are great at those things, and we'll put them under our house and we'll start working on this stuff. Larry Morgan from the Portland region. the man loves data, like data, right? So Larry's a huge part of our organization. He's back and forth to DC and all over this country. Just, I swear 2 times a week, he's out of the state. Larry's going to be hugely instrumental along with other people in helping us harness the power of data, right? Micro targeting. So instead of the old form of advertisement of our product, whether it's an individual candidate or the party platform and brand, instead of spending millions upon millions of dollars every election cycle on just huge one size fits all messaging through, say, like Channel 4 news channels or, cable news or cable TV and whatnot, you use data to micro target. So, Wendy, who lives in Benton County, will have data on her that shows she's, and I'm just using Wendy as an example. None of this is actual real stuff about Wendy, but like, let's say our data shows she's an NRA lifetime member. She loves going to the Home Depot. She loves Apple products, and she can't stand George Soros for some reason, right? Well, it helps us identify that that's somebody that's going to be favorable towards our Republican candidates for county commissioner, state representative, state senator, statewide office, whatever. And we send an email or a text or a pre-recorded phone message to Wendy to say, hey, please get out the vote for Kim Thatcher. Please get out the vote for whoever, right? And so that's micro targeting, where you're spending 3 cents doing a sniper shot, if you will, of getting the message out. Versus we're going to spend $5 on everybody on a message that half of them hated it, half of them loved it, and the results were kind of whatever, right? So efficiency, knowing who your customers are, again, long answer there, but there's one more thing, sign stuff, and I know, again, some people say field signs, all that stuff. It's like that's so like last century. Yeah, it's not as sexy as some things, but it still plays a role. Name ID plays a huge role in helping us win elections. I would say, if you had dominant name ID, you're going to win the vast majority of races just on that alone, because sadly, our society predominantly doesn't pay attention to what's going on. It's like, oh, I know that lady's name, or I know that guy's name. I'm going to vote for them because I don't know who the other people are. That kind of stuff happens all the time. So, you can rage against it and say how ridiculous it is. As all of us on this Zoom meeting tonight, we're not those kinds of people. We want to know what's going on. We want to know why this man or woman deserves or does not deserve our vote. But we're in a bubble, sadly. Hopefully, we're going to be able to help society come around to the reality that they need to start paying attention to who's running their government, because it is their life that is being ran into the what. When they're not paying attention and just letting whoever like Kate Brown or Tina Kotek or Shamia Fagan run it into the grave. But the fact of the matter is, name ID matters. So we're going to start using this massive organization to start building data on specifically where signs are located. So we have GPS, coordinated information now where we can ping something and say, okay, literally this 6-inch by 6-inch square out in the middle of Eastern Oregon on some highway is a Republican landowner who says, put your Republican candidate signs right here. School board, county commissioner, city council, mayor, statewide offices, legislature, all that kind of stuff. And you build that data up at the ORP where it goes in a vault forever, that no matter what happens in the future, that information is just building and gathering and paying more and more dividends, like money you're putting into a savings account that's yielding interest that never goes out. It only goes in. And just making sure that the next generation of leadership that comes along that replaces me, whether that's 2 years from now or 10 years from now, automatically it's like, boom, here you go, guys. Here's the organizational chart. Here's the password vault. Here's the data bank of sign locations for yard signs, freeway signs, all this kind of stuff. Here is the keys to the kingdom. Go make Oregon even better. That's the kind of stuff we have to start systematically building that investment fund, if you will, for future generations, whether it's 2 years from now or 40 years from now, be successful in holding freedom and liberty up and keeping it healthy.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey, you can always just like give me the hook sign or whatever.
Oh,
James.
no, you're fine. It sounds like you want to turn the Oregon Republican Party into a well-oiled machine. So
that's my hope. But I'm just one guy. I need all of you to be turning in your resumes. If you're not watching my weekly chair update videos that I started last week, please get connected with that. We're going to be doing at least one of those a week where I'll talk about this stuff. Last week, I requested resumes for website design and content, the committee for ballot initiatives, the committee for data banking sign locations, and it seems like there was one or two other things in there. I need you guys to be sending in your resumes, because again, I can't do it all on my own. There needs to be literally 5,000 of us at the ORP doing this stuff. And like, I'm telling you, we just need willing hearts. I don't really care who you are, where you've come from. I want you, if you want to be involved, and help me take the state back.
Nice. Well, that brings us to our next question. So what do you think the biggest challenge facing the Republican Party in Oregon, and how can we fix it?
Well, I'm probably going to have to give like a top 3 or 5 that probably are all fairly equal. It's really hard for me to know for sure which is the toughest thing. The media has got to be up there. I honestly don't know who they're talking about anymore when I see stories about me. The Senate Majority Leader, Rob Wagner, put out an opinion piece about me yesterday in the Portland Tribune, or whatever the heck it is. And he just lied a lot. And they're doing that to all of us. They say they're about unity. They say they're about tolerance. They say they're about all these noble sounding things. But the reality is all they do is scream and yell about how everybody else is supposed. They say don't label them, right? The radical left and the Democrats say don't label them, but they want to go around saying that we're racist or we're sexist, or we hate the LGBTQ community, or we hate people of different faiths or no faith or whatever. And it's like, well, no, I never said that in public or private. There's nothing that defines me that way at all that I have done. That's just what you're saying for political power's sake and gain. And then we have a media that wants to go out there and amplify it, right? And it's very much a one-way freeway. And so it's really much a sign of the times of the low character that exists in our society, but it's not everybody. They just so happen to be the people that have control of the microphone right now through media, whether it's the kind of television programs that are being put out, or movies being put out, or commercials being put out through Hollywood, or corporate Fortune 500 companies that call themselves the free press. But I mean, folks, like, honestly, guys, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, you name it, they're all the same. They're just all different versions of each other. It's for-profit gossip promoting destructive, tear society apart at the seams for their own ill-gotten gain corporation organizations. They really are the lowest of the low. So what do we do about that? We can gripe, we can scream and yell how unfair it is, but as conservatives or as Republicans or as freedom believing, liberty minded, whichever zone you fit in there, we're all the kind of people that believe in competing, right? We don't believe we're entitled to anything. We need to be creating our own journalistic outreach programs, frankly. That's a big lift, but we've got to find a way to wrestle the microphone away from the radical left and the corporate media, even all the way down to small town newspapers. The bias exists at any level because they're all coming out of liberal arts colleges and whatnot. And again, that doesn't mean everybody that comes out of those colleges are bad people. That's not it at all. But there's definitely an assault on freedom and liberty and balanced journalistic perspective that's coming out of these universities. I mean, look at the gentleman who won some prestigious national award for journalism the other day. I think he's the main news anchor for NBC, if I'm not mistaken. And he said something along the lines of, well, you know what? Let me pull it up here. Just bear with me. This quote needs to be read because this just kind of shows you what we're dealing with and why it kind of comes to mind as the number one thing we face.
Yeah, I agree with you as far as the bias in the media. I've witnessed it myself as KGW has shut off their cameras to hide the positives that Republicans have done. And yeah, it's despicable.
So it was NBC News anchor Lester Holt. He received a prestigious award the other day for media. And his quote was, "I think it's become clear that fairness is overrated." This was his acceptance speech, by the way. "The idea that we should always give two sides equal weight and merit does not reflect the world we find ourselves in."
Yeah.
I don't know why anyone would listen to someone like that. I don't care if it's Sean Hannity, Lester Holt, or someone in between. Wow, like, come on, like we've got to do better than that. And so we've got to find a way to start competing for the audience's attention. And so I don't know how we're going to do that right now, but somehow we're going to have to start either creating or promoting media that's out there or is going to be out there in the future that is actually going to get both sides of the story, that's going to be fair and balanced, truly. And it's not going to be about just peddling gossip just for the sake of getting clicks so they can make a little bit of money, regardless of what the cost to our children and our society is. So that's one. Infighting within our own family. The amount of infighting that I've seen since I came on as your ORP chair over the last 7 weeks, just here in Oregon, it really makes it hard for me to not kind of just bawl my eyes out sometimes, because I'm working as hard as I can. There's so many of you that are on this Zoom tonight that are working as hard as you possibly can. You're not doing this for money, because there is none. You're not doing this for fame, because it's really not fame you get. It's a bunch of attacks and hostility from people. You're terrified of what's coming if we don't turn this mess around. And yet we have some people that really seem to care more about the titles they possess, or, rubbing elbows with the who's who crowd, which, guys, let me tell you, if you have not yet in your life existed in the who's who crowd, trust me, it ain't anything you want to be a part of. I'm just some mower pushing, high school educated nobody who's been blessed to have tremendous opportunities to serve my community. And as I serve you now in this position, and I would much rather hang out with high school educated, just rural folk or folks working in the city at a regular job any day than hang out with Kate Brown or even some of the nationally recognized Republicans that you would know names of. I'm here to tell you, you're better people than they are. And so I don't understand that crowd, but the point is that we've got a lot of people that don't really seem to be in this for the cause. They're in it for themselves. And I'm hoping that their hearts will soften and change sooner than later, because, we need everybody to be pulling together. I would ask us to not call each other out by name. That's not always easy. I get asked questions by radio hosts and journalists all the time, like, hey, what do you think about this guy or this lady in your party or in the legislature that's a Republican? What do you think about them? And it becomes really easy if you let yourself go to just start throwing each other under the bus, and then it's just the Democrats steamrolling us and the radical left steamrolling us and Antifa taking over everything while we're all infighting. And so we have to hold ourselves accountable. So sometimes we're going to have some squabbles and some debates with each other about what's the correct way to go, but it always should be about the other person. What stirs us up should not be about, well, this person doesn't like me, or this person attacked me because they don't like the hat I wear, or whatever. Like, enough of that. Like, focus on serving others, quit worrying about self. If we would all just do that, and I know that sounds easy to say and hard to do, but it's the facts. If we would all just focus on others and helping others and quit worrying about ourselves, oh my gosh, the problems would just evaporate, and we could pull together and we could start winning. We'd also be the kind of people that are not currently in our house, in our ORP family or Republican Party family, would be drawn to, right? Because they'd be like, that's a family that loves each other, that is working together for a common cause of freedom and liberty and prosperity for all. And I want to be a part of that, right? So, I'm trying really hard as I continue to have arrows shot at me and get knifed in the back by people in my own party. I'm really trying hard to just keep turning the other cheek, which I'm getting dizzy at this point. But thank goodness I'm married to my beautiful bride who's sitting to my left. I asked her to sit in the room here with me, not because I'm worried about you guys. I know this is a great group of people, but just because I'm having a really hard time, and she's my rock that I got to lean on and just collapse on a lot of times. And most of the time, nobody's got a worse job than she does. But anyway, the media infighting, and I think I'll close with this on that question and answer is flat out not giving enough of a crap. That's most, not you guys, but I'm looking out my window here. Most people out there that agree with you and me, that hate what Kate Brown and the radical left is doing to our communities and our children's futures, on paper, they think the right way, they believe the right stuff, but they fall short of being enough, and it's a choice. They're not like James, who signs up to go into the US military to spill his blood and guts for freedom and liberty. They're just armchair quarterbacks who talk, who don't do anything except for maybe vote most of the time. And frankly, I have zero respect for them. Voting is not enough. A bumper sticker is not enough. Giving a couple pennies once a year is not enough. It takes full on effort to really earn freedom and liberty. Everybody else is just on freedom welfare. And you can't be nasty to people about it, but you do need to stand your ground and say, hey, I'm working my hind end off here so your kids can actually have a decent education, so you can keep having that job you keep going back to, so you can keep affording that boat you bought that you can keep going to the lake with. But what are you doing, right? What are you doing to actually give freedom and your future a real shot, right? And so we've got to find a way to encourage our brothers and sisters out there who feel the same as we do, think the same as we do, gripe about the same things you and I gripe about, but are just not really doing anything about it, right? So we got to give them some easy stuff to do. It's that whole rainstorm event that creates this flood of change. And that's really where, as your lead servant, I guess, that's where I really have a heavy burden to bear, but I can do it. Where I've got to just continue to figure out, how do I create the opportunities for all these men and women across the state to plug themselves in so we can turn this mess around, because we can do it. But those are the three main things I think come off, from off the top of my head, that I think, if we could just fix those, I think we'd be doing pretty good. We can worry, if there's others, we can worry about them later.
Yeah. I guess on the last of those three, the not being involved or not caring enough to get involved, how do you suggest young people get involved in Oregon politics?
Well, they need to join the Oregon Young Republicans. They need to sign up as PCPs. But we at our county chapters need to make it a welcoming, conducive environment for working age young people. Our meetings need to be at a time of the day that working class people like you and myself can actually go to. So that's something that we'll be working on at the ORP level, possibly by putting out a suggestive policy. Most of our counties, from what I can tell, are having their meetings in the evenings, but some of them are still having them in the middle of the day during the work week. That doesn't work. If the goal is to save the Republic, if the goal is to save Oregon, you have to have the people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s having a real shot opportunity to sink their teeth into this, be around the players within their local communities that are really politically engaged, be around the conversation, be able to get involved in some stuff 2, 3, 4 hours a week, for the real hard hitters. They have to be able to have access to this stuff, not just hear about it from Fox News or talk radio, right? And so you have to create an environment and an opportunity for those people, those young people, to actually get involved. And then once they've come through the door, give them something real to do, meaning give them some real authority at the table of power. Don't just say, come on in, young people. We need young people, right? And then well, that's great. You're here now. Just sit in the corner and shut up. We don't really want to hear your ideas, and we certainly don't want to implement them, right? That's got to go away. And that's not just for young people. That's for our minority communities too. We as Republicans have gotten pretty gun shy about talking about race because we're constantly being called racist, which we're not, and we're constantly being attacked on the grounds of race. But the fact of the matter is, young people in the minority communities, they're all kind of the same that way, from the standpoint that we need to reach out to those folks. We need to get it across to them that we're their family, we're the people that love them, we're the people that are fighting for their future and their success, and then give them real, true respect by giving them a position of authority and influence at the table of power of the Oregon Party as it is shaped going forward. That's the only way you grow a family. There has to be true respect, not just a a bunch of slogans about how much we want you.
Yeah, definitely. So that leads me to the next question. I guess turn gears a little bit here. What's been the most rewarding part of working in the legislature?
You know, sadly, there's not a whole lot, but it's, James, I'm going to keep focusing on you. Being a Marine, being overseas, having bullets flying at you, having people dying around you love and care about, doing things you don't want to have to do, but you've been forced into to defend your people and defend what you love. It's an honor, but it ain't a pleasure.
Yeah,
and I can't claim to be on your level because I'm just not, but I have my own form of PTSD after 6 years of living hell in this thing. And so I can say it's a tremendous honor to serve my God and my community and my family and the people throughout Oregon that are disenfranchised and being stomped on by the powerful. But there's sadly not a whole lot of good right now. There's been a couple times where I was able to get some bills through that I really felt like would help some people. I think probably the most rewarding stuff would be probably two things for me. One was a bill I passed. I'm a landscape contractor. So like, water features and new sod lawns and sprinkler systems and stuff like that. And, but my industry is super restricted. Like almost nobody can get a license to do what I do, and it's wrong. And so I was able, with the help of former Representative Diego Hernandez, him and I were able to push some legislation up the hill to open up the licensing to where more people could come into my industry and compete with me, like compete against me, which is counter logic to most people's way of looking at life. But I didn't go to the legislature to help myself, right? And it was something I knew a lot about. And so I was really pleased that we were able to open up that opportunity and open that gate up wider so more working class men and women could have a real shot at their dream to own their own business, right? Instead of always having to work for some jerk who was the only guy in his community that could get the license. Now they had a real chance to go out and pursue their own dreams. But sadly, there's always people that are fighting against that stuff to keep it restricted so they can be the only game in town, supply and demand, right? I came to find that a lot of the people that were opposing my landscape legislation to reduce the regulations on licensing were the big, huge landscape companies out of Portland and Bend. And for the longest time, I couldn't really figure out why they were fighting me so hard, because my bill just simply gave you the opportunity without taking a bunch of tests to have a probationary license where you could do up to $8,000 worth of work per customer per year, which really was a pretty small job range, which was not most of the work those big companies were worried about, right? But then it dawned on me one day when I was this close to getting that bill through. I said to myself one day, I was like, man, I think this is actually going to get passed. What if all my guys that work for me leave and go start their own thing, right? What am I going to do then, right? Which I was going to be super happy for them. But then all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, that's what all the fat cat, big business landscape guys are worried about. Their employees that are way too good for them, that they're not paying enough money, are going to bounce and go start their own thing. So it's just sad, but you have to fight like you wouldn't believe to do the right thing in Salem. And that's a battle that keeps on going, but we were able to get some good stuff through there. And that was a tremendous, tremendous thing for me personally to get through. And then, the other would be probably, because we're in these super minorities, sometimes the biggest victories are just simply when you can stop the other team from winning and getting what they want. So those walkouts, those denials of quorum and protests and whatnot against this overreaching tyranny from the radical left, stopping them from just absolutely destroying my community and your community economically through the cap and trade taxes, which is something I'd love to talk with you guys about at a later date in depth, because it's kind of a fascinating topic. And I do know quite a bit about that whole scheme and disaster that they were pushing on us and still are. There's a lot of bills in this legislative session that if we don't find the collective will as your Senate Republicans to start denying quorum and negotiating this session down to something that free people can survive, you're going to see the exact same stuff that we fought and bled for the last couple of years get through anyway, along with a lot of other horrible stuff. But yeah, that's probably the most rewarding, is just stopping the evil from just destroying everything. And hopefully in the future, there's going to be some better days ahead where whether I'm still there or it's young men and women like you are there in my place or in other legislators' places, you'll be able to find some real joy in getting some good stuff done and restoring hope to a lot of people that have lost it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so yeah, I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to now our vice chairwoman, Lauren Christensen now, who's been gathering questions from our audience. So good talking to you.
We have a lot of questions. So the first one is, you mentioned that you want to make ORP a big tent party. Can you clarify that to those who might misunderstand what you mean and think that you want to water down the ORP?
Yeah, I mean, so to me, it's just about freedom and liberty. If you're for freedom, if you're for liberty, if you're for people being able to make their own choices, as long as they're not directly, physically, or otherwise hostily attacking others, right? Like I have very strong convictions about social issues, fiscal issues, and whatnot. But I don't take it upon myself to get in my neighbor's face on the other side of the fence, who might think differently about some issue than me, as long as they respect me enough to let me make my own choices, right? Using government, no matter whether you're right-leaning or left-leaning, using government to force people against their will and against their core beliefs, using the government as a fist, it's not something I could ever support. It would not matter what the cause was. I'm about law and order. I'm about justice. I'm about accountability. But at the end of the day, I don't want the government telling me who to worship or who not to in my faith. I don't want the government telling me how I can or can't raise my children, right? And so I am not comfortable creating some political party that says, well, if you're not just like me, you can't be a part of this. That's not going to work. America, that's not what America is about. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, they're about what the government can't do to you. They're called negative rights. It's the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, all those. It's about what the government can't do to you. It can't say, Dimitri, what you have to say from your political soapbox is not popular in the community of Portland, or not popular in Southwest Oregon, or not popular in Eastern Oregon. So we, the government, declare that we're going to put you in jail or fine you or publicly shame you somehow because you're saying things from your mouth that we don't like. We don't want to go there, right? And so to me, it's just the fact that I don't care what race you are. I don't care who you're sleeping with. I care about what faith you are from a personal standpoint, but I don't care from the standpoint of whether that should matter, whether you should be part of the Republican Party or not, and pull with us to stop this onslaught of radical leftism that's seeking to just destroy everything and force everybody against their will. I mean, all you have to do is look at Kate Brown, folks, and make your decision for yourself. Do you want a dictator who tells you what you can and can't do, whether you can go to church or not, whether you can come together in 6 or more people or not for Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Easter or whatever? To me, that seems like a pretty obvious common threat that threatens all of us. And yeah, right now they might be focused on some heterosexual, Caucasian, rural Republican, male like myself, but eventually they'll get around to all of you, and there'll just be nothing good left. And we'll all be the equivalent of modern day slaves under a tyrannical government by people like Kate Brown and others like her, Shamia Fagan. So when I say big tent, I'm just saying, if you believe in freedom and if you believe in the liberty to exercise that freedom and stand your ground against your government, I really don't know why I want to care about everything else as much as some people do, because I mean, if it comes down to you have to be this brand of faith, you have to think exactly this way on this, this, and that, we're just going to all lose all of our freedom. You won't be able to make any of those choices for yourself. It doesn't matter what you believe going forward. Hopefully that, I mean, that's an honest answer. I don't know if that answers that well enough for you. I'm not here to water down core beliefs of anyone, but the idea that we can just be a party of like 2% of the population, and that freedom and liberty and all the values that has made America the great nation that it is will live on. It's not logical. It just won't work.
Yeah. And going off of that, talking about the ORP, who do you think is likely to replace the National Committee woman, Chris Barretto?
Oh, I mean, Tracy Hummel, I believe, is interested in running for that. I haven't heard any other names yet. I mean, it's going to be the delegates that decide that. That's not something the chair is going to decide. So, the voting elected delegates of the Republican Party will be the ones that make that decision in the end.
Yeah. And what did Josephine County do to turn itself around so fast?
Well, I'm not really the person to ask that. You need to talk to, sorry, what?
They started a bunch of committees.
Yeah, that's true. They did start. Hannah's talking to me here. They did start a lot of committees. They got organized. Holly, their chair, she's an animal. She just gets it done. She's been in charge of, she's had a business where she's had 70 employees under her leadership. I can't say that. I gotta be honest. Like I beg her for her help all the time. I'm bothering her about it every other day saying, hey, give me some ideas on this. Will you come help me on this? Right. She's just getting it done. And I mean, they've got a lot of other good people down there in Josephine County as well. But, they took their passion, they got organized, they got together, they said, hey, we can't just let Southwest Oregon and Josephine County just fall off a cliff. We've got all these new people moving in our community, and it's kind of tipping the scales if we're not careful here of how our voting's going and who's going to be representing us on a local level. One of the things she preaches a lot is, creating committees and making sure that people aren't overlapping into multiple committees so that everybody stays in their lane. That's one of the things that helps prevent that infighting we talked about earlier. I think one of the best ways to keep people working together is having them working separate, if that makes sense, right? Like, my job is to go focus on voter registration, and your job is to go focus on fundraising, and your job is to go focus on sign locations and getting the signs installed, right? So they're creating a bunch of different things for people to plug their passions and skills in. It's very similar to what I promoted on my campaign, through my campaign to run for ORP chair, and the kind of stuff we're implementing now. And so I think that's one of the ways, or one of the several of the things that they've done there. Passion, they've got an understanding of how to run a business and run dozens and dozens of people. They're giving people stuff to do. They're holding each other accountable. They've got a vision. They're executing that vision and mission, and they're just getting stuff done. And, they're going to keep growing it from there. But I think, just kind of off the top of my head, I think that's pretty accurate about how they've gone about it. But frankly, you ought to have Holly on sometime soon, because I just got endless good things to say about the woman.
Very cool. Next question. Oregon Democrats gerrymandered themselves 10 years of majorities in 2010 and will likely do so again this year. What is the best strategy to plan long-term to fight another 10 years of gerrymandered Democratic majorities?
So with the redistricting map process that's going on right now, the Democrats have complete control over it once again. There's really no good options for us as far as how that initial map's going to come out. It's either going to come through the House, the Senate, and the governor, or it's going to go to the Secretary of State, Shemia Fagan, quite possibly the most partisan and aggressive elected official in the entire 50 states of America. And so Kevin Mannix, if you know who he is, Kevin is a former legislator, Republican legislator. He's also a former Republican candidate for governor, ran against Ted Kulongowski. He is an extraordinarily successful attorney and has his own law firm. And so for some of you that were there at the election for the ORP executive board officers, He ran the meeting for the elections and whatnot. The man just like mesmerizes me, frankly, his strength of and ability of leadership. He's fair, he's just, he knows what he's doing. He controls things in the right way. He shows respect to all sides. He's the man as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, he said he wanted to get involved with the ORP with our new administration, and he's the lead person for focusing on the redistricting process. And really, I think our best road forward to finding a way to fairly draw in districts, both House, Senate here in the state legislature, but also our congressional seats that map will reflect. We need to be making sure we're doing all the right things to take this map to court for gerrymandering, for extreme bias. So that's going to be something that Kevin will start coming to a lot of you community leaders like yourselves here at the Young Republicans of Oregon and getting you involved in and whatnot, because that's not my wheelhouse. I'm surrounding myself with experts and good people in those particular areas. And he's the individual that had the talent, the history, the passion, and all that I felt like was the right person to lead that operation. So he just came on about 10 days ago. So we'll be hitting full speed there here in the coming weeks. But it's going to be through the court, unfortunately. I think any map that comes out through the Democrats is going to be so perverse and so wrong. It'll just make your head spin. But, I think in many ways it's about as bad as it can get right now. Hopefully it can't get much worse, but we're going to have to fight that with everything we got through the court system to get a just map.
Yeah. So if people want to get involved, what is the contact information for submitting ORP resumes?
My personal assistant, also vice chair for the Benton County Republicans, Wendy Jensen, is on. Can we unmute Wendy? Wendy, do we have the right emails to give them?
Did you want it to go through mine? How do you want it?
I think that would be, I think yours, and yeah, let's make it yours.
Okay. Do you want me to type it in? I can say it and then type it in. It's wendy.jensen@oregon.gop. I'm going to type it in here too.
And a second part of that question, does the ORP need someone to help with media issues?
Can you say that again? I couldn't quite hear you, Lauren.
Yeah, does the ORP need someone to help with media issues?
Yeah, I mean, send in your resume. I mean, we have, so let me get out my organizational chart here real quick. Oh, where is that? I apologize. I wasn't thinking I was gonna have to pull that chart out. No, that's not me. So we've got press secretary. We're looking for people that have some press secretary experience. Kevin Hoare is our communications director. Also, Stephen Lloyd is our social media director. So those two individuals are the people that you need to reach out to if you want to be involved in anything related to media, communications, messaging, that kind of stuff. Wendy, do you have Kevin's email? Let's see, I've got it here. Again, forgive me for being the dinosaur millennial and not just having this stuff just like that in my head, but I've got so many different things coming at me all the time. I can't possibly remember everybody's emails. It's okay. So Kevin's email for sending in resumes related to that is kevin.hoare@oregon.gop. So that's KEVIN.HOAR@oregon.gop.
It's in the chat also.
Be patient with us, guys, on some of this stuff. I know 7 weeks sounds like a lot. It's really not. We're having to build a lot of this stuff from scratch and from zero, and we're getting a lot of good work done. We inherited a lot of fantastic, amazing men and women But, building this organizational chart, recruiting the directors, recruiting the staff to where, and again, everybody's volunteer, right? Like Wendy, she's not getting, just like me, she's not getting paid anything to do this stuff, right? But she's going to be putting in hours and hours a week, messing around with this stuff. And it's obviously worthy, great stuff, but it's still, we're all working age people and whatnot. And so we're, like I talked with Wendy today, she's going to be recruiting an assistant for herself as well, to help her with all the different work that she's helping me, the chair, on. Billy Murphy, our new executive director, he's got a personal assistant now. She's going to need to be looking for a personal assistant for herself as well. So, at some point, we're going to have literally hundreds of people at the top state level of this organization. Why? Because one person, 10 people, 50 people can't possibly give you good customer service. It has to be literally hundreds of people so that you can actually send out a request for information, or send in your resume, or send out an idea that you want to see take root and be a part of at the Oregon Republican Party level, whether at the state level or the county level. And until we build this organization into hundreds of people at the administrative level, you won't get responses, or not good ones anyway, right? So it's still going to be a couple more months before we really get there, but it starts with you. That's why you got to send in these resumes and start sending them into the emails that I said. Like, again, if you're interested in being part of the sign location data bank system, send in a resume and say why and don't be intimidated by the word resume. Just say, hey, I'm Joe or Jane or Joe Smith or whatever, and I have a passion for this particular area that you guys are going to be working on, and this is why I think I could be really good at helping you on that. Like, we're here to bring you on in, but we need to know you're interested and need to know why you're, passionate about that. Again, the ballot initiative one, that's huge, right? We're in a super minority in the legislature. Guess what? You, the people, through the ballot initiative process, you can take the power back right now. You can do constitutional amendments to the Oregon state constitution through the ballot initiative process. But it takes a couple different things. It takes organization of being able to get the right concepts put together so we can take our freedom back and take our state back. And it takes organization around coordinating, a couple 100,000 people to get together at certain times of the year at certain locations throughout the state, Fair Week and whatnot, to sign a couple 100,000 registered voter signatures to all those ballot initiatives. So boom, we got 20 ballot initiatives taking the fight to the radical left and the Democrats. Those are the kind of things that if you're passionate about taking the state back, you got to send in your letter of interest, because otherwise you have no room to complain. I don't want to hear any ideas without action behind them. I don't want to hear any ideas or any complaining from anybody out there if you don't actually want to step up and do something about it and put your own heart and soul into this, because we're already giving it all we got. We need you.
Yeah, and looking at the time here, we were supposed to wrap up at 8. Are you okay to stay longer, or you need to go?
The boss says yes, I can stay a little bit longer.
Okay. We do have a couple more questions. So
I'm just talking to myself. Well, now they're going to think I'm just talking to myself.
I don't.
You can hear her laughing.
yeah. So how old do you have to be to get involved in helping with social media?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. How what?
How old do you have to be to get involved in helping with social media?
What are we talking, like 12 or 13 here? Like, what, I found when I played online video games, it was the kids that were like 12 or 13 that were the hardest for me to take on Gears of War and Call of Duty, kicked my butt all day long. So, I don't think there's a minimum. I don't think there's a maximum either.
Okay. And next question. COVID measures are a big concern to thousands of us. Is there any plan you see that seeks to stop this authoritarianism?
I've been giving it all I have to fight back against this authoritarianism for the better part of the last year here. And I don't have a lot of help at the legislative level right now. You, the people, are going to have to start beating down the door of your elected representatives and senators and start demanding that they start standing up for you, the people, we, the people. If you're not aware of it, I voted no on literally every single bill and motion of this entire legislative session this year, and it's half over. Not because I'm a jerk, but because I believe in something. The people of Oregon have been told you are not welcome at your own Capitol building. I want us to just think about that for a second, what that really means. This is America. This is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, the land of equality. But Kate Brown, Tina Kotek, Shamia Fagan, Peter Courtney, elected officials, Republican and Democrat alike, are allowed to come into your Capitol building, but you cannot follow us in. You cannot appeal to us. You cannot lobby us. You cannot say, hey, this is wrong, or hey, I like that, because you're unfit to be in the Capitol building. But Costco's open, Walmart's open, everybody's running around doing, for the most part, life as usual. But for some reason, the state, oh, by the way, at the Rangers game in Texas the other day, full capacity, packed out. But the Democrats of Oregon say, you, the people, are unfit to come into this Capitol building. That really just tells you where we're at. But we need men and women that are going to fight a lot harder than what we're seeing right now. We need working class men and women to rise up and say, if you don't start fighting with everything you have to get me my freedom back that never should have been taken away, to fight back against this authoritarianism, I'm going to run against you the next election cycle. That's the kind of stuff you have to do. I'm not a protectionist for politicians, guys. And there's a lot of people that don't like me because of that. I'm very confident I am easily the most hated person in the Capitol building. It's not even close. But you know what? I had a longtime senator kick my face in about 2 months ago and just said some of the most horrible things anybody's ever said to me. And he said to me, he said, you know, Hurd, when you came over here from the House, you had a terrible reputation. And I knew what he was talking about. He was talking about with the politicians, because I'm a bit of a boat shaker. I'm a rabble rouser. I'm not a go along to get along type with the politicians and the who's crowd. And I said to this person, I said, I have a terrible reputation with who? And he didn't understand what I meant. He thought that I didn't understand that I had a bad reputation with them. What I was saying to him was that I had no respect for the people he said that I had a bad reputation with. It's a badge of honor with me, frankly, to know that some of the worst human beings on the planet don't like me. I can't do this on my own, though. I really need you guys, we need, as millennials, and it's not just millennials on here tonight, we as working class people, as people who love freedom and liberty, as people who know it is not anyone's right to tell us whether we have to wear an article of clothing over our face, or whether we can have our families over for Thanksgiving, or whether we're going to go to church or not, or whether we're going to be able to keep our businesses open or not. We need to quit worrying about what other people think about us that don't support those same rights and ideals. We need to quit waiting for other people to fix these problems for us. We certainly need to quit waiting for the kind of people who have the vacuum of character that would actually take your freedoms and rights away. We need to quit waiting for them to give it back. I'm hearing different arguments every single day because I'm obsessive about language and what people say and what's like reading between the lines, watching their body language, like what do they really mean versus what they're saying. And I'm continuing to hear more and more things being said by the Democrats that lead me to believe that they are not planning on giving you your freedom back. Governor Brown does not like me a whole lot, as you can imagine. And she called me the other day to, I think, gloat, frankly, to tell me that the Brazilian variant of COVID-19 had been confirmed in my Senate district. And essentially, they were just going to have to really crack down to make sure that was, taken care of and whatnot, AKA your citizens' freedoms and rights don't mean anything because I'm in control. I have the power and I am going to use it as long as I want to, as long as I can get away with excuses and one new thing after new scare tactic to tell you why your freedom and liberty is just an old-fashioned idea and a dream. Those types of people, you have to fight back against them. You have to do things the right way, though, right? Like I'm not shy about my faith. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, and I'm probably a pretty poor representation of my Lord from time to time, but I try really hard to do things. I try to fight the good fight as viciously as the enemy forces me to, but I don't want to go so far as to do things that are morally wrong in doing it. You don't have to. You don't have to lie. You don't have to steal. You don't have to cheat. You just have to work really, really hard, and you have to love people really, really hard, and you have to be willing to sacrifice and martyr yourself a lot. But I firmly believe, as miserable as it is sometimes, and the good Marine knows what I'm talking about, those who are called to serve and give it everything they have are truly going to be blessed for eternity for that willingness to do so. And so it's not easy, but I would always encourage you to take that step out there and fight the good fight. But yeah, there's no plan right now, not an organized one. But hey, if you got a passion for that, come to the ORP and tell me how we're going to do it.
Yeah, and so on last week's video that you put out, you mentioned a scrap metal program for fundraising. Can you explain more?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another one. As a good old fashioned, country boy redneck, that's that kind of stuff really excites me. Scrap steel and junk and all that. Anyway, so I call it, from a business person's vocabulary, I'm just a small business guy, but we would call it depreciated items. So I don't know, it's been like 11 years ago, long before I was in the legislature, any of that. I put together a political PAC called Secro PAC, and that was the Committee to Elect Candidates to Republican Office. And my dad and I put that together, and we were just trying to help the House Republicans that were in the 30-30 House split, where you had co-speaker Bruce Hanna and co-speaker Arnie Roeblen, then Senator Roeblen, now retired legislator. Anyway, we wanted to help our House Republicans take the outright majority. And so we came up with the concept of going out and recruiting not cash, not checks, but stuff. And we focused on businesses. So depreciated items means, from a tax perspective, if you're a business owner like myself who has a construction company, and I buy a pickup for the business, say it was $40,000 when I bought it brand new for the landscape company, and then I wrote it off, meaning I depreciated it out because it's for business use. But now it's sitting in the back boneyard and it's not really being used or whatever. I got a perfect example. I got a 99 Ford diesel pickup right now. It's great. It's been sitting at my shop yard for like 2 years straight, just as a backup in case we have a bunch of other pickups break down. It's probably worth $7,000-8,000, right? Well, if I wrote a check to the ORP, I can't write that off as a business owner. Just like a person who doesn't own a business can't write that off if they make a political contribution with cash money. So if you wrote an $8,000 check, that means you would have had to have earned probably $11,000 in income at least, and then paid taxes to be able to afford to pay that $8,000. But if you're a business person or a farmer or a rancher or whatever, or you don't have to be a business owner, but you have something like that pickup, and you want to see the Republicans take back the state, you can in-kind donate that depreciated item or that thing to the party. Obviously, you're not going to pay any taxes on it because that's something separate entirely. And then the party can go out and sell that item to whoever wants to buy it. And they may buy it for $6,000. They might buy it for $8,000 or $9,000 or whatever. That person who bought it is not making a political donation. Actually, they are actually buying an item. It doesn't matter who was the owner. In this case, it was a political party. That's not relevant. So it's something you can do, whether you have scrap steel, you donate it to the party. If you have an old pickup, you donate it to the party. If you have an old tractor, you donate it to the party. If you have furniture, you donate it to the party. Anything that we can take and then resell, the party's going to benefit. Republican candidates are going to benefit. You are going to benefit because you're helping the party in a big way. And I found that it was a way of helping people that otherwise wouldn't have wrote big checks make big impacts. Because like one gentleman who owns a lumber mill, He gave us $4,000 worth of scrap steel, even though he's only written about $2,000 in checks. But that one time he gave us $4,000 in scrap steel, which was a big deal. That's a big help, right? So what I'm looking for is a couple different things. I'm looking for men and women who really want to put the work in on the leadership level to help us grow this network, where we'll have probably like, 11 or 13 of you or whatever that make up the ORP state board. And that's what I want you to send your letters of interest in right now for, where you'll be on that board for recruitment of depreciated items, donations, non-cash donations. And your role in part will be to figure out how we're going to recruit locations in every single county across the state that will be storage yards. Now, a storage yard in this case for donated items for a not-for-profit, it doesn't require special zoning or anything like that. So maybe you've got an acre in your back field or your front field where we can store stuff in Douglas County or in Washington County or in Benton County or in Union County. Or Grant County, right? We need to have multiple site depository locations to store this stuff until it's time to take it to market and sell it. The other side of it, where you'll be working in collaboration probably with like our tech people, our website folks and whatnot, is creating our own distribution, social media, website media program to actually advertise those items, right? Whether it's a couch, like, and we don't necessarily have to recreate the wheel, but we can advertise it through Facebook Marketplace. We could advertise it through Craigslist. There's all sorts of different ways, but you first got to recruit the items, store the items, and then you got to find a way to market your items, just like you and I would selling any stuff that we don't want anymore, right? All that stuff, if we do this right, guys, that will equate to millions of dollars a year in new money that we're not currently getting. And let me tell you what just a new $1 million coming into a 2-year elective or legislative election cycle means. If we'd have had an extra $1 million just on the Senate Republican side of things, I don't know the House Republicans elections as well as I know the Senate side, but for the Senate side, I guarantee you we'd have at least one more Senate seat. But I think it's very likely we'd have had at least 2 more. And everything would be way different right now in the legislative session. Instead of having 11 Republicans and 1 conservative independent senator, meaning a total of 12, we'd have 14. And everything. And then you add a conservative Democrat and Betsy Johnson, that have really made things pretty much a tie most of the time on big issues, and everything would just be completely different. So $1 million, $2 million, most parts of the country, that wouldn't even matter. Here, it makes a massive impact, but it starts with you. So if you got a passion for the scrap steel committee, if you want to call it that, or the depreciated items committee, please send in your resumes of interest, and we want to get you involved in helping us lead the charge on getting that thing going.
And where can people find your weekly videos?
Well, we just started doing that last week, and we sent it out just to the PCPs, but let me get back to you on that, on what we're going to do with that. James, Lauren, like, make sure you follow up with me on growing that, because the last video I did it really kind of for the ORP family, and that's really who it's going to be focused on for the most part going forward. But that doesn't mean we can't throw it out there to everybody else. I mean, I think last time I checked, I think it had over 500 views on the YouTube thing, and it was like an unlisted YouTube thing. It was just something where we sent out emails with a link, and everybody watched it. And that was just something I threw together and rambled on for 14 minutes. But it's important stuff. It's stuff that matters to me. I just got a lot to ramble on about in this clankety head of mine. But yeah, it's something that I think is something we're going to start really doing a lot of, because I'm clearly a talker. Everybody can see that. Nobody needs to tell me I can run my mouth endlessly. I'm already aware of that. But I am kind of shy, frankly, when it comes to self-promotion. It's not really something I'm real big on. But now that I'm in this position of chair and I'm serving you across the entire state of Oregon, I really need to do a better job of not self-promotion, but getting in front of you so you can hear about what's going on, what I'm wanting you to get involved in, how you can get involved, and just that kind of stuff. I think it's healthy for us, and I think it's something that's very needed. I don't want to make the mistake of thinking, like, well, you know what, I'm putting in 80 hours a week. I know I'm fighting the good fight. I know I'm getting a lot of great stuff done, and they should just assume that, that I'm getting it done. No, that's not fair to you. You need to know what's going on, and I'm going to do a much better job of making sure you know what that is. But we'll get back to you, the Young Republicans, with some detailed information there on how you can better plug in to catch those weekly updates as we grow that outreach. Wendy, will you make sure to make a note of that we need to get with Kevin and the gang there and get the information back to them on that and how we're going to promote that later? Thank you.
Great. So what are your thoughts on the recall of Gavin Newsom?
Fantastic. California has a different setup than we do, as I understand, and I'm not the pro on understanding the California election system, but as I understand it, if the thing that is the person occupying the governorship there down in California is successfully recalled, I believe they will have a runoff election to replace him. Does anybody have any information contrary to that? Raise your hand. Tell me, Heard, you don't know what you're talking about. I'll probably agree with you. I believe that is correct. Whereas here, unfortunately, in Oregon, if we were successful in running a recall against Kay Brown, that means Shamia Fagan would be our new governor, and she would be unrestricted to run for office for 2 more terms. That's not a good thing. We need to be recruiting a solid rock star woman or man Republican to run against whoever the Democrat nominee is going to be in next year's election, because Kate Brown can't run again, thank goodness. But yeah, as far as I'm not, just like Brown, I'm not going to call Newsom a governor. He's a dictator. He's a horrible person. I am thrilled that he is going to have to deal with that.
Yeah, and last question. How hard is the legislature working to help wildfire victims?
I think the legislature, Republican and Democrat, is working pretty hard on that issue. But frankly, I don't think we're going to address it the way it most needs to be addressed. As a Douglas County native, I'm born and raised in the timber capital of the world. And at 36 years of age now, I can remember when things were very different. Our economy was rock star amazing. Working class families had 3 cars, a boat, an RV, nice houses, money to send their kids to college or whatever, and hope for the future that was unrivaled across the world in the working class ranks. And as the federal government and the extremist groups that claim to be environmentalists, but really are just anti-human success people, elitists and brainwashed individuals who worship trees rather than care about children and their families, we have seen our forests and our jobs. Our forests are overcrowded. They're not managed. They're disease ridden from what's the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh, it's getting late and my brain is failing. Disease related to immune deficiencies, basically from overcrowding, but also, the beetles, the insects, different things like that. One of the main things that causes fires and causes them to just blow up and see the things we've had is, again, too much stuff on the ground, not enough management, old fire scars where you've had big fires before that were not salvage logged. So just in case you don't know this, when you have some of these devastating fires go through a mature forest, now this is a mature forest, not something that's like 30 years or younger. If it's 30 years or younger, for the most part, it just gets evaporated. But if it's a mature crop, 80% or more, a lot of times, of that tree that's still left there standing is usable to cut down, put on a log truck, send to a mill, create jobs all the way start to finish, build houses. For the environmentalists out there, it secures carbon for the long term, meaning it's a carbon sink, right? Instead of leaving it on the ground to rot and burn up at the next fire. That's the thing that I love, and I mean that facetiously. I'm very sarcastic in that statement. I love that about the Democrats and the radical left. They go around claiming to be the caretakers of Mother Earth, but they're literally going the opposite direction of how you would actually create a good, healthy environment, not just for us, not just for the trees, but for the animals, the fish, the birds, which is animals, all those things. I'm being redundant. You have to manage these forests to actually create a healthy working environment that works for everyone. What they're doing is just bringing about mass devastation for everything: the trees, the fish, the birds, erosion in the rivers, no jobs, drug addiction, welfare addiction. It's not working for anyone. And then again, the fires, right? I mean, if your if you're hell-bent on curbing pollution, why would you want to promote circumstances that create these bomb experience type forest fires that dump carbon into the atmosphere? Why would you be for that? None of it makes sense. But they'll bring in somebody from Oregon State University or some other university from somewhere else that's never spent a real day in the world actually doing this stuff for real. They're just like, oh, here's our study that was, funded by some environmentalist group if you go back far enough to look at it, and they'll tell us about why all the rest of us don't know anything about reality, and why you just shouldn't log, and you shouldn't thin, and you shouldn't clear cut, and you shouldn't do the kind of things that you have to do to keep the forest green and growing and healthy and not burning every year. The other thing too, sadly, is I'm a firm believer that we've got a real problem in our society of people that are going out and intentionally starting these fires. How coordinated it is, I don't know. But I'm frankly disturbed by this really hostile backlash reaction that happened last year to the questions around the suspicious nature of how several dozen fires, literally in a several hour period when there was no lightning storms across the state anywhere, all of a sudden in these major populated areas, we just had this explosion of fire all over the state. I'm born and raised here. Ask my wife. I'm one of the most boring people on the planet. I almost never leave Oregon. I love Oregon. I love doing stuff here. So it's not like I'm always somewhere else and I don't know what's going on in my own home state. That didn't make sense last year from a purely nature-driven standpoint. They say, oh, it's climate change and it's the wind and the heat waves. Guys, next time it's a hot day, do you see your house exploding spontaneously because it's 110 degrees outside? No, you have to have something that ignited that fire. And so there's just a lot of problems and a lot of things that are really concerning me that we're not getting good answers on. Plus, for that matter, we saw several individuals caught by police and law enforcement starting fires, but yet we were all just crazy for asking, hey, how did all the rest of them start? And why was it all like in the middle of towns or around towns and all on the same weekend? I mean, it's not a coincidence. So anyway, before I get my tinfoil hat on too much, that's that answer.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair Hurd, for joining us this evening. It's been fun. I'll turn it over to Dimitri to close the interview.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for coming on. We really appreciated this interview. For folks who are tuned in, if you want to watch this again or share with your friends, we're going to have this interview available on our YouTube and on all of our platforms in one way or another. In fact, you can also find it on Instagram. We were live streaming on Instagram, and there was a good amount of people coming on and even asking a few questions that we asked today. Senator Hurd, if you don't mind me asking one last question, it's going to be brief. There is a state ORP conference coming up, if I say that correctly. Could you briefly mention that's going to be about, and if folks interested to get involved or come to that, what can they do to do that?
So Wendy, do you want to come on here? Right now we're still making the final. Now, are you talking about our spring meeting here in June? Is that what you're referencing?
The one in October, I believe, in Bend.
Oh, okay. So you're talking about the platform convention and the state convention. Yeah, that's going to be in Bend. Yeah, I mean, we're still putting the work into that and trying to get that all organized and settled out. We're like I've said earlier, like I really want to give the power to the people. And so what we did with the June event and the one in October was we narrowed it down to some locations. The one in June, we narrowed it down to 4 locations. The one in October, we narrowed it down to 2. And we put that out there to our ORP family to vote on. And we let them make the decision on where those events were going to be located instead of the chair or the executive board making that decision. Because it affects everybody that's going to be coming to it. So I just felt like it was the right thing to do to say, hey, you, the people, make the choice. That's us putting our money where our mouth is on the principles that I campaigned on. But I'm a little bit new to the scene, so I'm sure somebody out there watching will love to criticize me and they'll say, oh, he's not organized and all this kind of stuff. I'm doing endless things. So say whatever you want to say. We're going to be putting together a great show, both in June and in October. Margie Hughes, who is the wonderful chair for the Clackamas County Republicans, That woman just never stops, and she does great work. She's wearing about like 7 hats right now. So like me wearing 2, like I'm such a whiner when I complain. She's got 7 on, and she's like, give me 7 more. She's heading up that committee right now as far as event planning, group discount stuff, just a lot of the organizational stuff on that. That'll come into full picture here now that we have the 2 locations as of like literally today. The polling was done, the people had spoken, and now we can start planning on all the different things that'll happen at those events. So if you wouldn't mind having me come back on maybe like in a month or so, we could talk about that at length then, because yeah, I'd love to have as many people as we can. But before I get completely off the rails and say something I'm not supposed to say and like invite a bunch of stuff that I'm not supposed to, let me get my feet underneath me on exactly what we're going to be doing there, what's appropriate as far as invites and broadcasting that, and then let me get back to you. But my hope for the future is that we're going to have at least one main event every single year in this state going forward, where we get some out of state rock stars to come here, not literally like Mick Jagger, although that'd be fine too if he's a Republican. But the point is that I want to start recruiting some amazing people, and that kind of stuff has been done in the past. So it's not like it's going to be something brand new, but I'd like us to be able on a fairly regular basis to be able to get some names here, some men and women that you guys know and respect and admire, to just get, the passionate juices flowing and get some excitement going. But hey, it starts with us here tonight. Like, we've got to start raising money. We've got to start registering new voters. We've got to start recruiting premium candidates. We need to be winning back our children's hearts and minds at our school board elections coming up here soon, folks. We need to start showing that the grassroots is lighting a fire and that we're turning Oregon around. And once the national scene starts to just see the slightest sign that that is happening, you watch. We'll start getting some crazy great names and great people coming here, some men and women that'll really light the fire in us. But yeah, those are the kind of things in the future that we hope to accomplish. I really want to make those events something that's fun to go to, that like, you're like, oh my gosh, it's kind of like Disneyland. I can't wait to go back to that next year, right? Like, that's the kind of stuff we need to be doing. Maybe we need to be having some Xbox and PS4 tournaments or whatever. I don't know. We'll figure out some stuff there. But right now, I'm a little too new to be able to give you a lot of great details, but give me back on in 3 to 4 weeks, and I promise we'll have more of a finished product to actually unveil for you to get you excited about. Fair enough?
Sounds good. We love having you on. This is your 2nd time with us, and every time you come on, it's a great honor. So thank you very much.
You guys are very kind.
Thank you.
It's easy to come on and talk with great people.
Thank you, sir. Just wanted to say really quickly, if you folks are interested to get involved, you can find that information. I believe there's some information that was already in the chat. You can find more information on our website. If you would like to donate to Young Republicans, you can also find that on our website. We have a weekly, a monthly podcast that comes out that Lauren does. She does a great job with that, and YouTube, social media. So please come on. We would love to have you. And we're looking forward to the next interview. Thank you, sir.